While exploring the caves where prehistoric humans once lived, archaeologists came across something rather bizarre. On the walls of these caves, they found drawings that appear to show people eating something that looks remarkably similar to, well, poop. But wait a minute. Does this really mean prehistoric humans actually ate poop? Or is there something else going on? At first glance, the drawings certainly look pretty strange. But when we dig a little deeper into the past, we discover that the answer is much more complicated and, honestly, much more interesting. Because, as unbelievable as it may sound, there is archaeological evidence showing that prehistoric humans sometimes consume things that we would consider completely inedible today. But before we conclude that our ancestors simply sat down for dinner and enjoyed a nice plate of poop, we need to understand how they actually lived. And that brings us to one very interesting question. What was actually in that drawing? Some archaeologists believe it may have been some kind of primitive fruit. Others think it could have been a plant root. And then there is a third theory, a theory that most scientists don't want to talk about. Apparently, prehistoric humans may have simply had a very strange sense of humor. Because imagine living 30,000 years ago. You don't have television, you don't have the internet, you don't have TikTok. So what do? You grab a piece of charcoal, walk into your cave, and draw your friend eating shit. And then everyone laughs. Honestly, it sounds pretty realistic. But things get even stranger, because archaeologists discovered another drawing that supposedly shows a man holding something in his hands. Researchers spent years trying to figure out what it was. Some claimed it was a spear. Others thought it was some kind of primitive tool. Some even believed it might have been a weapon used for hunting. But then scientists took a closer look at the drawing, and they realized something incredible. It wasn't a spear. It wasn't a tool. It wasn't a weapon. It was the longest turd ever drawn. And not only was it the longest turd ever drawn, but according to expert estimates, it was apparently so long that the man who produced it probably needed several days just to finish the job. Of course, there is absolutely no evidence for this. But honestly, look at the drawing. That is not a normal turd. That is a turd with ambition, a turd with a plan, a turd that woke up that morning and said, "Today, I will not be an ordinary turd." And then they drew it on the cave wall. Why? We still don't know. But some researchers believe it may have represented power, wealth, and social status. In other words, if you had the biggest turd in the tribe, you were the boss. And that was no small deal. First of all, you got the best cave. While everyone else was sleeping on cold rocks, you got the softest rock available. You also had the right to sit closest to the fire. But that wasn't the only benefit. The leader with the biggest turd also got to choose his food first. If the tribe caught a mammoth, he got the best piece. If they found berries, he got the most berries. And if they found something that looked like poop, well, that was his. Because in prehistoric times, it didn't matter how smart you were. It didn't matter how strong you were. It didn't even matter how good you were at hunting. There was only one thing that mattered. How big of a turd could you produce? Of course, this is just a theory. A very stupid theory. Next stupid video is coming soon, probably even stupider than this one, so be sure to subscribe.